Good morning, everybody. It's great to have you with us this morning as we do begin another one of our Let's Meets on indeed a very important topic, looking at the security of supply of gas in Europe, which of course in the current context of the war in Ukraine is an issue that is growing in great importance to all of us, to policymakers, alongside the people of Europe. As I've said, we have seen indeed very difficult situation develop in our eastern areas with the war in Ukraine. And indeed, we have to look at what in Europe we can do to protect ourselves and to make sure that we have gas that is sufficient to keep our buildings warm, our schools and hospitals warm, but also look to see how we can diversify supplies and how we can actually make sure that we are able to meet the forthcoming winters with the next winter due in just 6 months, to make sure we're able to meet this winter with the right energy at hand. Well, the good news is that today I have real experts on the topic to talk about what we are able to do in terms of security of supply. As you'll know, on the 23rd of March, the European Commission launched a revision of the Security of Supply Directive, looking at improving storage within the European Union as a means to alleviate the difficulties that we face because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I'm also very happy that we have Alejandro with us, but we also have Jakub from the Czech permanent representation to the European Union. And Jakub will be able to give us a view of the Czechs, who will be the next presidency coming in at the end of June, but also maybe able to give us some insight into how the Council of the European Union is positioning itself around this issue. And I'm also delighted to have two industry experts in Sara Piskor from ENTSOG, director there, looking at policy and strategy, and Kavita Ahluwalia, who is the Eurogas Strategy Committee Chair, which deals with our policy issues, but she's also the Vice President responsible for global positioning of Uniper. And so we'll have a very broad discussion with some very important insights from important actors within the European Union. Just a reminder, these events, of course, are nothing without you, the audience. We do want your active participation. So please do use the Q&A function, which is at the bottom of your screen, and a little box to write your questions, which will be answered. Alejandro will be speaking first as the keynote speaker, and he is able to stay until 11:30. And so it would be good if you have questions for Alejandro to please put them into the box, and then I'll be able to ask him once they've finished. Indeed, please do remember to put your name and the organization that you represent, just so as we have the correct orientation when we are offering the questions to the panelists. And others, I would say 5 minutes in, and without further ado, do let me introduce, indeed, Alejandro Ulzurrun de Asanza Muñoz, who's the head of unit, Energy Security and Safety in DG Energy here in the European Commission in Brussels. And Alejandro, you have an incredibly busy day as you'll be going off to some very important meetings this afternoon. And I can only say thank you very much on behalf of all the members of Eurogas for joining us. Welcome to the event. Please, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, James. Good morning to everyone. And James, thanks a lot for the invitation and for the organization of this event, which I think is very timely. Thanks a lot also to all the other panelists for being there, and in particular to all the participants who are there behind the screens. Yeah, James, you mentioned it's busy days. When you proposed me to participate in this event, I told you I was really very happy to do so. I didn't know that my day was going to be so busy today, but I'm happy to stay on here. And when I have to leave, my colleagues Leandro Stucker and Elena de Gregorio, who are our experts on gas SOS, will stay on for the rest of the meeting, of course. So, James, this event, the title of this event has a question mark, right? Do we need to rethink gas security of supply? I think that actually we don't need that question mark. We do need to rethink gas security of supply, and for two obvious reasons that you have already mentioned in your introduction: the geopolitical situation that we are in right now. But even before that, we in the EU, we had already started moving towards a radical change on the way our energy systems are organized. security of supply is a key part of that energy system, and we already had started the reflection, the thinking on how the security architecture of the future should look like, bearing in mind the new shape of the architecture. So very well chosen title, very good subject for today's discussion. And voila, I should say the reply to your question is straightforward and clear. Yes, we must rethink, and we are already doing that. And a part of that rethinking is precisely the legislative proposal on gas storage that I will mention, or I will talk about briefly in a few words. I have said that we have to rethink, but that doesn't mean that we start from scratch when it comes to energy security in the European Union, and in particular to gas security of supply. We already have a robust security of supply system, which has been built on the experience of many years. And we have preparedness procedures based on scenarios, based on cooperation between member states, business, international partners, etc. And the result of that is that we can deal with the current situation that we are in right now. But of course, we need to improve our preparedness. We need to get ready for next winter. And in particular, we need to increase or to speed up our path to decrease our dependency on Russian fossil fuels. So bottom line here is we're prepared, we're ready. The EU has made its homework, and part of its homework is the comprehensive EU gas preparedness overview that the Commission has carried out in the last months, already for a long period now, simulating possible disruption scenarios from Russia and the impact that this would have in the energy system for this summer, but also for the next winter and beyond. For this summer, as I said, we are ready, and this is thanks to the good preparation of member states, businesses, and I would like to emphasize here that ENTSOG has played a key role there. We will hear from Sara in a moment about what ENTSOG is doing to feed into this preparation work, but I would really thank ENTSOG because we're working with them in close partnership, and this is really, really important to make sure that we know the risks that the EU is facing and that we work out the necessary preparedness measures for them. And preparedness measures are the key important here, and the Commission is really pleased to see how member states have really worked out and beefed up their plans to be ready for possible disruptions. So we're ready, but things have changed and we need to be ready for the future, which means coming up with new instruments, with new processes, and with new solutions to the challenges that we have now and that we are likely to have in the future. It's not at all a business as usual situation. We need to act fast and with efficiency in order to be able to tackle a number of challenges that are of wide impact, not just for the energy sector in the EU, for the economy of the EU, and in general for the world as well. So the Commission on the 8th of March adopted its Repower EU communication, outlining a number of measures regarding the energy energy system, and in particular, already setting the political path towards the phasing out of fossil fuels from Russia. This political communication was followed by a European Council meeting on the week of the 10th and 11th March, where heads of state and government basically confirmed that this was the path to follow. Among the measures that were announced there was one regarding the need of having a solid legislative framework for gas storage, which had been identified as one of the issues on which we have drawn lessons from the recent months. So that is why the Commission, in rather quick time, on the 23rd of March, proposed a legislative act regarding gas storage. This legislative act is due to enter into force as soon as possible, because its idea is that it reinforces the gas of security of supply architecture of the EU in such time that for next winter we have sufficient tools to have better preparedness. Few words, because you cannot go into the details of the proposal, but maybe let me just touch on the key elements of this proposal. This proposal is about setting an EU filling target and defining filling trajectories which accompany that target. It is about defining a set of tools that allow member states to achieve the filling objectives, and that includes incentives, that could include fines, but also it includes a very important system of certification, which is a new feature of the system, and all that with a rather reinforced monitoring system in order to make sure that those provisions are not just put on paper, but that they really actually apply. So this is the, let's say, very briefly, the description of the gas proposal. Of course, I know that you have read all this proposal very much in detail. I won't go into the details now because I only have 10 minutes, and I have the feeling I have already used that time. Maybe to put things in the broader context. So this is just one element, important, but one element of the many elements that the Commission is working on right now. We are broadly working on the diversification of gas supply and routes, which is a key important element here. And of course, then what is very important as well is that the real solution, the real immediate answer to the issues that we're facing is a swift transition to a renewables-based system, energy system. That's what we need to achieve. I will not, as I said, because we don't have a lot of time, go into the storage proposal. Maybe let me emphasize one element of this storage proposal, which is that of solidarity. The storage proposal that we have on the table is based on solidarity to underpin the energy transition and to optimize the use of current infrastructure. So it is designed in such a way that everyone plays their part and everywhere shares the benefits, but also the costs of the insurance that storage is for the economy in Europe. Having mentioned solidarity, I would like to mention or to say as well that this is not an abstract concept. The way in which we are working is that this storage proposal is being now currently negotiated by the Parliament and the Council, the European Parliament and the Council. All the institutions have a commitment to make sure that this proposal is adopted as soon as possible, in keeping with the important need to have it as soon as possible already for the next winter season. And in fact, the two co-legislators at the EU level, the European Parliament and the Council, are meeting as we speak, or will be meeting later in the day, actually that being part of the drive to have the proposal adopted as soon as possible. To conclude, we have to try to put things in perspective, we have a double challenge. We have the current challenge, which is the geopolitical situation in which we are in. But let's not forget that we have another challenge, which is the climate challenge. That was already one of the key drivers of the policy action of the EU at the beginning of the mandate of this Commission. So, two very important, complex challenges that we need to meet. And the thing is that, in a way, the solution, there are a number of solutions, there are a number of policy actions which can help tackle both challenges. In the short term, gas savings, working on alternative supplies are important measures, as is the legislation storage that I just referred to, as is the EU energy purchasing platform that the Commission has put forward. But ultimately, the only strong commitment to the EU's Green Deal and to the Fit for 55 ambitions will help us to be truly independent, to have a strategic autonomy. So we live in uncertain times. We have to bring certainty. We have to set a path to come up with solutions which go from the short to the mid-term. We are on it. We are working on it in a spirit of solidarity that involves everyone across the EU, member states, businesses, citizens. We hope to push it through. The challenge is high, and in order to achieve the challenge effectively, we need to count on everybody's opinion. So that's why I'm very happy to be here at this event. And that is why I will stop talking now, because I feel I have already overrun the allocated time. So thanks again, James, and I look forward to comments and questions on this matter.
Not at all, Alejandro. I'm really happy to hear your overview and really, very grateful setting out the context and then also going through the measures. And I think that was very useful for everybody. So I'm not really worrying about a slight overrun of time, Alejandro, because we wanted to hear what you have to say. I think there are probably also a lot of engagement. A lot of people have already raised questions. So I'm going to refer to a couple, at least, which are very much relating to the regulation, which is under consideration. And I might add a couple of my own. The first from Mark Johnston, and he's asking whether or not you would agree that on the present rates, the filling target could be met early, e.g. by the end of August. And he explains this by saying, in background, they're about 40% full now, and they're filling at a rate of about 0.5% per day. So he's saying at 0.5 say 80 days should be about 80%. Do you foresee this at all, Alejandro? Are you seeing the market continuing to fill the storage? And in this case, do you think we're on track to meet the targets?
Thanks a lot. Thanks for the question. Indeed, that's good news. So in fact, the fact that we need to fill gas storages as quick as possible for the next winter is something that we haven't come up with now. It is something that we have worked on at political and technical level already since many months. And I remember Commissioner Simpson and other political leaders are already passing this strong political message that we need to do everything which is necessary to ensure a sufficient level of filling storage. So the filling rates are currently going, the filling is going in the right direction, but a number of challenges that we had already in the past already remain. So the fact that member states are really doing their bit, that operators are doing the bit, that doesn't mean that we don't need the legislation. That means that things are going in the right direction, but we really need to reinforce our system so that things which have happened in the past do not repeat themselves.
Indeed, indeed. And then a very pertinent question as well. You also mentioned it, the new certification procedure. I'm afraid it's an anonymous attendee. I always ask people to give their names, but okay, the question is still relevant. They're asking for an example of when a storage operator could be refused. Maybe it's a bit hard to give an example, but maybe when you're thinking about the regulation, under what circumstances are you envisaging that there could be a problem with the awarding of a certificate, Alejandro?
Absolutely. The certification procedures are very important, because one thing that was clear already before is that storage is a critical gas storage is a critical infrastructure. So the way it works and the role it plays in the system is something which has a critical impact on the energy system, but also on society. So the certification here is really designed in such a way that it addresses security of supply risks at national, regional, or EU level. In other words, the authorities who have to do the certification, they have to look into the company and look into a number of factors and determine if those factors, they are likely to create a security of supply risk. If they find that there are security of supply risks, the authorities can impose a number of conditions, what are called remedies, to tackle those. And if it is not possible to implement those remedies, there are another of other measures which address the situation. So the thing is, this is for the certification authorities to assess who will and who will not be certified. But the point here is that the certification has a very clear parameter, and that parameter is the role that the operator plays in the security of supply at national, regional, and European level.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great, Alejandro. Thanks for that clarification. Another question is coming from, and again, an anonymous attendee, and it's actually quite specifically saying if the supply is cut due to buyers' refusal to pay in line with this demand to pay in rubles, would that trigger the security of supply regulation solidarity measure? Let's make it more general and say, if there is a disruption of supply from Russia, would that be what you're using as the trigger point for the solidarity measure?
Thanks a lot. This allows me to come back to my initial point. So we have a robust security of supply architecture, which is based on the fact that member states have plans to deal with contingencies, and then there are a number of levels of alert, which leads the Commission, member states, to take a number of measures which are in their plan. So that we are basically working daily on with member states. There are already a number of member states which, following the legislation, have applied the first of those alert levels in order to take into account a number of developments which took place. There are a number of higher alert levels which are also foreseen by the legislation, and let's hope that they need to not to be useful. But we are getting ready for everything. We are getting ready for everything with member states. So what we have done at EU level is to do an updated EU overview of the new risks, because in the last 6 months we have identified that now there are risks which are highly or are more likely to materialize than before. This is shared with member states. Member states factor them in their plans, and we are ready if and when, if theoretically any of those levels would have to be launched, then we would be ready for them. There is a clear, let's say, process for that, and we're, as I said, we're working with member states every day to make sure that we will apply them if and when.
One final question I'll ask you, Alejandro. I really appreciate it, and the questions are really flowing in. It's almost difficult.
Absolutely.
But Alexander Ismeni has asked about the mention of two-way contracts for difference as a mean to incentivize gas storage. I think there are probably many different options that you would put on the table, and I think you've kind of left that in the members' hands. But he is asking a specific question about that, which I think is interesting, which is why I'm asking it. And that is, if a country chooses this method, is there a European notification process in advance? And what's the kind of length of that process? I guess it is a kind of subsidy in a way, isn't it? A contract to, so, DG competition, I guess, would have to be involved. Alejandro, have you ever talked about that in DG ENER? Is there a kind of view on the different methods and how you will also engage with DG competition? And is there a kind of fast tracking, or has anything been discussed? Any insight you can offer?
No, absolutely. I will be very modest in my reply here, because this is a very important matter. It's part of the incentives, right? Because as I said at the beginning, you want to give member states the tools to achieve certain objectives, and you just don't want restrictive tools. You also want to make it happen. So this kind of contracts are indeed one possibility to make sure that they can happen. We're in talks with our colleagues. Of course, we're in close with our colleagues in DG competition to make sure that the provisions are such that we respect competition, that the competition rules are respected, and the integrity of the internal markets. The idea is not such that we in the regulation provide with such details, but there is a broader system, which I confess I'm not like 100% super expert on, which applies. So, but the general principle is that, of course, we are looking at this with our DG competition colleagues in order to make sure that it applies in such way that all the relevant EU rules and internal market rules are respected.
And I guess that is important in the sense that also we are moving swiftly because of the unprecedented situation we find ourselves in. We have to still bear in mind that our rules, but I guess we will need to see them move quickly to make sure that countries can act. So, thanks. Alejandro, thanks so much. I mean, really, we've had half the webinar, and I've really put you on the spot. I'm going to say, thank you very much, Alejandro. I know you have to set off because you're also preparing for your own trilogue, big business this afternoon. And so, again, thanks very much for joining us. I'm going to move into Jakub.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Good luck this afternoon.
Thank you.
Jakub, there are a number of questions that are coming through that we could also ask you, but actually, before I ask you, Jakub, Jakub Černohorský, who is the energy attaché from the Czech Republic, and I'm very happy he is joining us today, as I said, with the forthcoming presidency, and as we know, the trilogue's beginning today. Jakub, maybe you'd like to give an overview of the Czech position and also any updates from the European Council. Please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Hi, James. Was it on me?
Sorry, Jakub?
Was it on me? Is it my turn? I'm sorry.
It's your turn. Yes, it's your turn, Jakub. I'm saying now that Alejandro has to go off to prepare for his trilogue. I thought it'd be interesting before. There are so many questions I could ask you directly, but I thought actually before we go into questions, probably good just to hear the Czech's view of the proposal, whether you're supportive, how you see it. And also maybe any insights you want to give entirely at your discretion from the process in the Council of the EU. So Jakub, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. In this case, I will try to be very brief, as I read a couple of the questions there, and they are really interesting and they are cutting to the chase. So very simply and briefly about the position or about the process in the Council. Czech Republic, of course, very much supports the idea of the proposal for gas storage. All of us in the Council very much realized that the Commission had only, I don't know, Alejandro might want to correct me on this, but they only had like 3 weeks or 4 weeks to prepare this proposal, which is not a standard time. But given the circumstances, they did a really good job. Nobody expected that everybody's going to accept the proposal as they presented. That's not how it works, but it was imperative for us to have this proposal as soon as possible and that we start working on this. So what it does is that it wants to ensure that the filling storages are filled at certain levels by before the next winter. The gas storages have always worked on a commercial basis in Europe. So they were used, it's not like a new thing for us. The new thing here is that these storage facilities are now based on this Commission's proposal should also work and be filled if the filling is not commercially viable. So the member states and the European Union in general has to make sure that the storages are full in order to ensure our security of supply. Because with this new geopolitical situation, and I completely agree with Alejandro, who said at the beginning that the answer to the question and the topic of today's meeting is surely yes, we do need to rethink or tweak our gas systems. This entails infrastructure, new projects, better interconnection among the member states, increasing our LNG import capacity or even pipeline capacity where it's possible and where it helps, and make Europe stronger in this sense. Based on our analysis, we do not believe that we won't be using gas anymore in the future. This is simply not technically possible, not in 10 years, not even probably in 20 years. There will still be plenty of use for gas, even if it means for flexibility reasons, for balancing of the market and of the electricity grid, for example, for heating, be it natural gas or green alternatives, biomethane, hydrogen, anything actually. So this is what we have to keep in mind. But today's topic is more concentrated on the gas storage and on the current situation. So I'll try to stick to this. We agreed on Coreper last week on the Council's position. If I understood from the discussion well, the Commission was okay with it because the presidency, the French, who are doing really great work, and their pace actually is incredible and demanding even for all of us. It seems that we are on the same page, not just the Council and the Commission on this, because the goals and the main architecture, as the Commission says, has been maintained, but even the member states among themselves. The goal is clear and everybody wants to fill their storage facilities as soon as possible in order to be prepared for the next winter or for either price shocks or stop of gas flows from the east. So this is, I guess, common for everyone, and I think this is going to be the same for the Parliament as well, but we'll see about that in a couple of hours. Alejandro, good job there if you're still listening, or people from your team. So that's it. The trialogues today, in a couple of days, we have the Commission and the Presidency should give us some debriefings, and we'll see how quickly we will be able to close this file. We all know that member states already started refilling their storage facilities in all Europe, and the levels of gas in them is increasing every day. In the Czech Republic is actually filling at the maximum capacity, so we're doing what we can. And if everything goes well, if there are no troubles, we might be able to actually get to the target set in the proposal even before the deadline. So that'd be great, but we have to be prepared for all eventualities, so we will see. And just very shortly about the Czech priorities regarding this, as you might have heard in the past, the French presidency, the Parliament, the Commission, they all want this gas storage proposal to be closed and finalized as soon as possible. So we do not expect to deal with this under the Czech presidency, but other gas files, for example, the gas market regulation and directive will be high on our priorities. And of course, we will also deal with methane with a bit of a lower priority, as we have more pressing things to do now. But we're not going to forget about this. So in this area, that's it. And I think that we can actually continue on. I'll be here until the end of the meeting in case there are questions.
No, thanks, Jakub. And thanks for the candid nature of the intervention as well. I really appreciate that. I will take a couple of questions for you, though, from things that have been asked, because you also touched on it. Solidarity mechanisms are coming up over and over again. And, you know, you are also in a landlocked country. I'm very interested. Tim Kahler is asking, are the procedures adequately detailed on how the European solidarity mechanism will direct gas flows between member states in case of a lack of supply from Russia? And Bart Verest, directly underneath, is also asking, you know, how can we ensure solidarity among the member states remains when there are different status of warning levels? And he gives the examples of Germany and Poland. How do you see it? Is there enough in there on the way the solidarity mechanism should work if there's a failure of Russia to supply gas to us? And also, do you see the member states behaving in solidarity way, given different exposure to gas and given different levels of need of it? Jakub, please, your views would be welcome.
Thank you very much, James. Kind of difficult and long question, or a couple of questions put together. I'm not sure if I'll be able to answer all of them, but I'll try. Czech Republic being landlocked country with a couple of others, yeah, our position is quite difficult about this. What we need is to have alternative infrastructure, which is not sufficient in case the gas supply stops from Russia. So we do have some alternatives in mind, and we're glad to see that the LNG terminals or their capacities are increasing, so this is good for us. But regarding the solidarity, Alejandro already mentioned that there are these solidarity agreements being negotiated between countries. A couple of them already have them in place. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure. I'm not probably the best person to ask if they contain enough details in order to ensure enough solidarity for everyone. Because the system is very complicated or complex to say. We do not know, and we can't even expect to have a clear picture of what exactly will happen and who will have enough of what and what capacities are going to be congested or not. So I can't really say. We're doing whatever we can on bilateral or multilateral basis. We're discussing with our neighbors, even in the, for example, if I may get back shortly to the gas storage regulation, we had a long discussion on solidarity there. And the Polish and the Finns and Slovenians and loads of others actually advocated for better solidarity mechanisms. And in the end, it got inside the council's position. The reassurances, for example, that in case there is emergency situation in one or the other member states, the respective country will always have access to its gas supplies stored in another member state. So that's that. Okay.
No, that's helpful, Jakub. And I think from your answer, I can say is that there is an expectation of how solidarity will work. So there is a clear, if it's not so clearly specifically defined, in fact, the member states also have the flexibility to undertake those kind of negotiations, discussions with their neighbours. So I do believe that, yes, we do see an overarching framework, but indeed also some flexibility for how the member states will. There's one thing you pointed about the LNG infrastructure, and Vesta van Gaal, who's working for EU Observer, asked, is there a danger that we're going to overshoot the amount of LNG import capacity that we actually need? And that'll be your last question, then, Jakub, and I'm going to go on to Sara. Is there a risk? Do you think that there's been an overreaction that we've announced much more LNG import facilities than we need? Is that how you might? Do you have those fears at all, Jakub?
Not fears, to be honest. I kind of want this to happen. I mean, import capacity, if we're talking just about capacity, this is what we need, to have more capacity that we actually can use. And this actually makes Europe stronger, that the LNG tankers can actually go to different ports, or in case some infrastructure is damaged or needs to be repaired, we do need spare capacity to redirect our flow. So I hope this is going to happen, to be honest. Regarding the imports themselves, I do not think so. I mean, this is actually, in this case, it's not what's been happening now. If I understand correctly, again, I'm not the best person to ask this, but the Commission is or is supposed to be negotiating with both the alternative LNG suppliers, but also the importers inside the EU about their exact needs, what they need and what they actually can import right now. So I don't think that this should be a problem. So because the supply will always be connected just with demand, not just that like, come on, bring all the LNG you have, and then we'll just take care of it. So I am not afraid of this, I guess.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Jakub, and thanks for the answers and your overview. Sara, I'd like to bring you in next. ENTSOG have already been mentioned by Alejandro as somebody who's been working very closely with the European Commission to help them planning what's coming up and any risks for disruption. In ENTSOG, how are you viewing the revision to this security of supply regulation? Are you seeing it suitable, given that you have your finger on the pulse in terms of the way that gas is flowing? How are you feeling in ENTSOG about the current situation and this, in particular, this piece of legislation? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, James. I hope you can hear me very well. Thank you very much also for the invitation. It's indeed very timely and great to hear from both Commission and Council on their very rapid process that they are both in. Well, indeed, ENTSOG and all my colleagues are really working around the clock right now to support anticipation of what kind of situation we may face and to prepare to that situation the best way we can. We assist indeed the member states, the Commission, with understanding the consequences for their national situation. And what I can say about where we are today, I can confirm I've looked at the EU storage platform data. Today, the storages in Europe are filled at the level of 39.48%, which is a positive signal. But as our president says, keep up the good work and continue filling storages, because this is exactly what we need as soon as possible. And it's great to hear from Jakub that this could be possible for some member states already even before the 1st of October. That's exactly what we need. On ENTSOG side, as I said, we are working 24/7 in a sense that we have established this REC system for gas. As Alejandro mentioned, the EU has put in place quite a robust system for managing the situation. We will have still some practical advices here, which I will say a few words about in a second. But what I can tell you about how do we manage this today, first of all, our colleagues are having daily calls with all the member states, with all the dispatching centers around Europe. And this communication is ongoing every day, every hour we get updates from colleagues. We are, of course, very much in contact with our colleagues in Ukraine. This, what I can tell you is that our colleague who is working there daily, he's still filling his daily work for ENTSOG, and we very much rely also on his assessments of how the situation is developing there. However, as ENTSOG, we were tasked to develop as a part of our regulatory work, the summer supply outlook, which is the most boring publication that we are normally producing every year. Nobody really felt anxious about gas supplies until this year, really. Summer supply was very much about, the level of storage was normally sufficient, and that was very regular publication that we were preparing every year. However, this year, it's a publication which we issued this month so that we could illustrate and help the decision makers to have a really detailed picture of how the situation with storages in Europe looks like. And also, for the first time ever, we modeled the situation where we would experience the full Russian disruption, in the sense that gas would stop flowing from the eastern direction completely via Ukraine, via Belarus. And we checked the consequences of this scenario, this super one-in-a-kind situation, very unexpected for all of us. And what are the consequences of the systems? So addressing your questions directly, James, here we are looking at how the system will cope with this assumption that we are not in a situation we could receive Russian gas anymore, for multiple reasons, you name them. The situation here is that we have indeed detected the situations where majority of the major member states could be able to meet the filling target of 80% by 1st of October this year normally. However, 3 countries would have some difficulties with it. And those would be Finland, those would be the Baltic states, Latvia and Estonia, which could potentially be exposed to the demand curtailment in a situation of a full Russian disruption. There would also probably be some need for withdrawal of gas from storages also throughout the summertime in some parts of the central northern EU. And I would say that very important part of dealing with the situation could also rely on French and German border situation, where we have this authorization issue that would need to be administratively somehow handled between the member states in order to help gas flowing from west to east. And when we are speaking about, let's say, how the member states would cope with it, of course, also the LNG common purchasing platform, of course, increased number of LNG terminals, you've heard probably about the German projects here, is something that could generally help. We could also potentially see the impact in our model. We see the impact of the imports from Turkey that could help Bulgaria and Balkan states here. However, what we have localized are a little bit some missing capacities, in a sense that we would need to have a fast track optimization of those capacities in order to do something that we have never really needed to think of. Namely, we would need to, let's say, redirect the flows from traditionally eastern to western direction. Now the flows, thanks to the LNG available via the common purchasing agreement, would need to flow west to east. That's why when you're asking how much we would need to rethink and how the system can cope, I think this is the novelty, James, for which we would need to prepare. And this is something that comes to us with some observations about this capacity limits that we are reaching. Some pipelines are going for their maximum capacity and uptakes. And here, I think some situations that we observe throughout the modeling of such a situation could arise potentially in the central Eastern European countries. That is why we look so much forward to hear from the Commission on the Repower EU framework that could support to institutionalize management of this fast-track preparation for this capacity limitation alleviation. And that's something that we really hope for the Repower to guide us there in the good direction. And maybe 2 words about the SOS regulation itself, James, if you allow, just very briefly. I think what we did this time was this unprecedented exercise of checking the consequences of the full disruption, not of one pipeline due to the maintenance or due to some technical issues, for example, but of the full direction. And what we are seeing as ENTSOG is indeed that in our robust framework, we would also have this addition maybe of analyzing the S-1 rule, not only N-1, not only one pipeline, but also the full direction, so supply source disruption. That's something that we believe puts us all in a better positioning to understand the consequences and prepares us better to just work with the member states. Because this is what Alejandro said at the beginning. It is very much about now building on those data with the member states to help them to prepare for what they have in their storages, for what they have in their solidarity agreements with the main neighborhood countries. We cannot forget the countries which do not have storage in their own territory. That's why it is very important that member states build on this information. And also, I think this S-1 shows us clearly where are the missing links potentially. And last but not least, something that my colleagues have tested in the battle right now is the management of this crisis situation. On our end, on TSO side, we are, I think, quite well organized in a way, as I told you, 24/7 system is already in place. What we see is maybe needed is similar systems, similar 24/7 availability of member states and also of all relevant stakeholders, also shippers, also those that would be negotiating maybe via those contracts for this difference, maybe via different market tools, but that could know exactly when and where gas is needed. And that would be a system that would enable building on today's gas coordination group, maybe the management of a crisis situation in a case if that would happen. So we have this practical maybe solution to offer here based on the RECA system for gas TSOs. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take your questions to answer.
Thanks very much, Sara. And indeed, some very candid views there. And indeed, very, very helpful to hear about the way that you're working and how you are engaged very strongly in understanding what the flows are and what the risks are and what the scenarios that we can plan to try and alleviate the risks if there was a large disruption. What I'm going to do, Sara, is I'm going to go actually directly to Kavita, and I'm going to bring you and Kavita and Jakub together to ask some of those questions that are in here. And I can already prepare you by saying that Georgian Albu has asked, is current gas availability affected by the filling obligation? And so I will come back to you on this because I think it's a very good question. Kavita, I would like to give you the floor because we are running short on time, but I want to make sure you have time to present. And then if we can, we'll get some of the questions towards the very, very end, and maybe people stay 5 more minutes if they will. And Kavita, yeah, you are indeed in a very interesting position, Vice President of Global Strategy in Uniper. Uniper, a very important energy company. How are you seeing the development of this regulation, and how do you think it's going to impact your business activities? Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thanks, James, and thanks everyone for joining us this morning, for this really important conversation. And of course, to all the colleagues who've gone first, because quite frankly, very, very important and clever observations there already. So I'll try to add. Yes, maybe just 2 words on Uniper. And I'm not from our strategy department, but I do handle the policy team for EU and Germany, our main market. Maybe just 1 point on Uniper, which really matters in this context, is of course that we have total storage capacities of 83 terawatt hours in Germany, Austria, and UK, and we own those. We're basically we own facilities in the range of 25% of the German market. So for us, this piece of legislation around storage really does matter from a company point of view as well. I think it's worth stating very clearly from a sectoral point of view on the outset that we are in unprecedented times. It is clear that we are in a situation of a crisis, and security of supply worries are founded in the sense that going into the next winter, there needs to be more assurances provided. And of course, we are witnessing high energy prices and of course high gas prices. And nevertheless, we do believe that this situation around these emergency measures then also should be very much limited to this situation, and looking beyond that, going back to as much of a market-based approach as possible. So any measures taken should be targeted, limited in scope and time. I think just giving maybe a quick overview in terms of the way we view the current gas supply regulation and storage provisions. Overall, I think it is a good approach. There are, of course, some caveats from our point of view in terms of adding more flexibility, and what we've seen from the council position, which emerged last week, I think on the 11th, is extremely positive. So kudos to Jakub and the colleagues there in their approach to all of this. So in terms of mandatory filling requirements here, we, from a Eurogas point of view as well, we believe that a 90% mandatory filling level is perhaps a little bit high, and it really is about every last percentage point that you would add there. It does become more costly. So here the flexibility is really key, and we're really appreciating what we're seeing from council in this regard. Those interim targets, intermediary targets, as suggested by Alejandro and the Commission, whilst they do provide obviously the level of certainty that perhaps some may wish for, it is overly costly and restrictive. So in this regard as well, again, more tailor-made solutions geared towards member states and their situations is definitely the better way forward, because again, it is about the most cost-efficient way of filling these storages. The deviation rules, of 2%, we really welcome the fact that the council here understands that 5% is more than what is needed in this instance. And again, I think in terms of use it or lose it, if need be, in the case that target values were not achieved, we do understand that the use it or lose it principle should be applied. But again, here it's more around the detail of how this should be done, and there's some thoughts around releasing it on an interruptible basis to ensure the flexibility of capacity for the storage user is not unnecessarily restricted. We do also believe that transmission system operators should not be the only ones able to buy strategic stocks. It should be left to member states to determine the market actor. And for example, market area managers, in the German context, it's the TIE, Trading Hub Europe. And from a Uniper point of view, again, here we also believe that unbundling rules should be respected insofar as possible. And then in terms of burden sharing, it goes without saying, obviously, this is, this whole piece of legislation is at the heart of EU policy making in this time. And the principle of burden sharing absolutely deserves support. But nevertheless, questions remain open, and member states may need more details to find adequate solutions. Again, here, I think the ideas put forward by the council are very, very much ones that we would welcome in terms of more pragmatism. Looking at the time and noting that we will have questions, I'm going to stop there. I'm just going to quickly, as a final note, just say that Jakub, it was Alejandro as well that said, there are two challenges here. One is the security of supply, short-term issue, and then the other is decarbonization, and we are fully aware of this. Indeed, all the issues around diversification and gas decarbonization, these are the topics that really keep us busy also at Eurogas. So here, all I can say is that in terms of regulatory infrastructure and all the kind of measures that the Commission is also considering around gas market design, around certification, and around, of course, financing of critical infrastructure, etc. All of this is really, really important, and we need as much certainty in terms of secondary legislation, delegated acts, definitions, certifications, etc., as we can possibly get to ensure that we can also progress and move forward and bring in as much in terms of volume of renewable and decarbonized gases going forward as quickly as possible. I'll leave it there, James. Thank you.
That was great, Kavita, and really, really helpful also to see from a market player and related to storage some of the issues which are also challenging, because I think that's the first time that we've touched on areas where people have identified things that are challenging. And you mentioned intermediate targets, the actual target itself, 90%, and these are things that I think that, of course, are very important. And it's good to hear from you how you see the necessity of this, but also how there are specific elements of it which you feel are perhaps going a bit too far in this short period of time. And I think that is good to balance what we've also heard. Now, I'd ask Sara and Jakub if they're still available to join us, because I would like to take the question that I mentioned from Georgian Albu, who is saying, is the current gas availability affected by the filling obligation? It goes right back to the very first question that Mark Johnson asked, saying, storage is going to be finished, you're going to be full, we're going to hit the target of 80% by the end, 80 days by the end of the summer. So do we see any impact on gas availability at the moment? And do we think more broadly that the filling obligation will have an impact on gas availability? Sara, you've come off first, then I'll go to Kavita, and then Jakub, if you want to add anything, feel free. Try to be short, because I'd like to do one or two more questions as well, please. We're going to go over on by 5 minutes. We've still got about 150 people with us, so I think we're still justified to carry on. Sara, please.
Thank you, James. Look, I'm probably not the representative of shippers here, so I will not be able probably to give you detailed data about this one. But what I can tell you, and maybe that's a little bit of a commercial then from my side, is that we have launched the dashboards that are helping the market to monitor the situation. We believe that we as TSOs, we cannot, let's say, dictate market how to use the resource. If there is scarcity of resources, there is, of course, a big situation, big consequence on the system. Of course, we will manage as the shipper would like us to manage it. But what we are trying to do is to provide the transparent information. And you will have two dashboards on our website. One is related to the gas flows, and one is related to the storage filling levels. And both those dashboards could facilitate making the decisions to the shippers and to have a very one-stop shop, easy to access information about the current flows, the current situation. So far, James, I didn't have that kind of signals from my colleagues that there would be shortages of gas due to the filling levels. I would say that the situation seems stable, even if the most affected countries right now by the whole geopolitical situation, which are Poland and Bulgaria, who are already experiencing the situation of complete stop of the Russian deliveries. So even there, the situation, as I hear from my colleagues still this morning, is stable, well balanced, all the nominations are covered. So that's very positive signal, and I do not have anything else here. What I could say is that in any case, if we would have the scarcity of a resource situation, probably the shippers would be the best to, and the markets would be the best to try to address it. And if not, then probably the regulators will need to find some sort of common solution between the member states would need to occur there.
Well, I think we could probably agree with that with Eurogas. Kavita, please.
Now, thank you, Sara, as well, for providing all these dashboards and all this information. Honestly, we've got a lot of homework to do, and I'm glad we've got you as colleagues also covering those at that end. Sarah's absolutely right. I don't think we see any issue around supply and flows at the moment. Well, certainly not in light of any of the storage requirements here. But the problem is it's around the prices then that you would see. So as you have those intermediate target levels, if they're prescribed, etc., you will see higher prices going towards those intermediate levels every time you have to hit a target, right? And I think this is what we're trying to prevent. Again, everything should be as cost efficient as possible. I think there is an understanding that as well that we would want to come back. Also from a member state point of view, we would want to come back to market-based mechanism and a market-based system as soon as possible. Also to ensure that those storage infrastructure remains attractive as well for future investments, etc. So I think that's my short answer. Basically, we're not seeing any problems there. It's really around prices.
Yeah, that's good. It's good, Kavita, and thanks for that, and thanks for linking the 2 points. Jakub, I don't know if you want to answer this one. No, okay, because I was going to think there's an interesting idea that's come through from a number of sources. Somebody called Mykola Yakovenko, but also kind of reflected by a question from Agata as well. And I think, should we be extending this in some ways to non-EU countries and thinking about how we could build a better relationship? For example, Ukrainian gas storages that could be used even in the current situation. Should we be considering what we can get in terms of solidarity and support also from non-EU countries in the vicinity? I don't know, Jakub, if in the council you've discussed the possibilities to go beyond our borders for that sort of strategic security supply mechanism.
Thanks for the question. This specific question, actually, not in detail, definitely not. There were some ideas, yes, definitely regarding Ukraine, but more in the post-war period, I would say. I mean, it offers huge opportunities for this to increasing our security, and with better interconnection, it means also more security for Ukraine. But in this unstable environment, difficult to say. I mean, yes, we could do something like this, but even the Commission said that on the first place, there is this, the security of the European countries is on the first place.
No, thanks for that, Jakub. Kavita, you put your hand up, but yeah, please go on.
Yeah, I mean, Jakub's absolutely right. These are discussions for the post-crisis, post-war period, right? And God, we have enough to deal with now first, and all my thoughts are with those people. But Ukraine does hold huge potential. I mean, there's something like 31, I think, BCM storage capacity in the Ukraine. Again, going forward and coming back to also what Alejandro said earlier, again, around the decarbonization efforts as well. If nothing else, all of this is showing the extremely important value of storage going forward. I think it was the unsung hero for years, and now that certainly isn't the case. So again, you know, I think in a post-war world, whatever we find ourselves in, Ukraine will be a really important part of the strategy going forward. And of course, you know, there, again, huge potential also for storing decarbonized and renewable gases then as well in the not too distant future, hopefully.
Thanks for that, Kavita. Thanks for that, Jakub. And indeed, I mean, we are looking at the future. We want to be positive. And I think that Ukraine, and I think Kavita and I had the chance to actually meet with the CCO of Naftogaz of Ukraine last week. And indeed, he did lay out the facts and the vision that Ukraine could be a very, very important part for our solidarity mechanism in terms of the storage that it has. So I think that we can imagine how it could possibly be extended to also for their support. There's a couple of questions coming in about infrastructure, and I'm going to go to you, Sara. Frida and Agata are asking about, and specifically they're asking about MidCat. I don't know if you want to take MidCat on specifically, but more importantly, it's to say, does your modeling suggest that we need to improve infrastructure and connectors between countries like France and Spain is an obvious one, but elsewhere in Europe, when you're doing your modeling, are you seeing a shortfall in the infrastructure that we have?
Thank you, James. Just to maybe ensure a little bit to the previous question that we are thinking about our colleagues from the energy community. We are working with the energy communities countries already now, because of course the situation in Ukraine is super unstable right now, but there are neighbors that are still dependent on the situation. And I must say that their situation in storage is much less so promising than ours. It is 18% of filling levels right now. So there could be potentially some consequences for energy community countries, but we are in daily contacts with them as well via this ecosystem that I've mentioned. Now, when it comes to the infrastructure, James, I would say that I won't go into one particular project maybe here, if you allow me, but we can, of course, address the questions also in writing. I'm very happy to redirect this also after event. I would say that indeed we have localized some capacity limitations. And that's why in my introductory remarks, I said that it is very important how the Commission would guide us there on the Repower framework, so that this is thank you, Jakub, so that this is also done in a coherent way and in a transparent process. I would say it's very important that we can, let's say, manage the situation before the next winter. But you have also, in your questions that I saw for the moment I was observing incoming, are asking also about the future. And I would say for the TSOs, for us, it is this. It is very much about preparing for the investments on the new framework. New TENI doesn't allow for many gas investments at all. It allows for future-proofed investments only, and it allows for hydrogen investments only. So whatever we would upgrade now for natural gas situation mitigation and for allowing this flows from LNG terminals north to south, west to east, a completely new direction, we would then be benefiting from this infrastructure in the future, because it has to be hydrogen ready. And this is how we look at it. Whenever a project has a benefits documented right now for this SOS situation, it will also be designed and managed in a way that can prove sustainability gains in the future. And that's, I think, the approach that we are taking for this in ENTSOG. Indeed, there are missing capacities, and we would need to face that situation next winter. So that's what we are working on with the member states right now. But we are working on it based on these premises that should be hydrogen and biomethane ready.
That's great. And that's great, Sara. And I think in essence, that's where we all agree in the gas industry. I mean, we see it as well in things like TENI, where you have projects as well. That I think it is important that we are looking at how we are planning for the future. And Kavita's already mentioned it at least twice. So I think that is clear. Kavita, I'll give you the floor. I don't know if you want to comment on infrastructure, or maybe more in general about storage, whether or not you think there's enough storage, whether you imagine other storage capacities would need to be found. but I'll leave you. You're free to give the final words before I round up. So please, whatever is on your mind.
No pressure. Well, we've already had two colleagues. We've already had two colleagues of, they've had to drop out. So I mean, looking at the time, I think it's fair maybe just to add that this is just one piece of the puzzle. This gas storage and the regulation. This is just one piece of the puzzle of what we're discussing right now. And again, the infrastructure, it stretches to LNG. It stretches. I mean, again, the council is really connecting the dots here, right, and bringing those elements and counting this towards then achieving your targets, etc., makes a lot of sense. I'm hearing that the EPP have an article. It's up for debate this afternoon before going into trilogue. That they're looking at the financing of gas infrastructure projects again in terms of mitigating supply risks. This is all. This will help for sure. And yeah, for years, gas storage was the absolute unsung hero, just kind of providing, the necessary backup, which wasn't always priced in terms of market terms. And my gosh, has the situation changed? So I think, having as much diversification of supply in the mix, etc., having all these options available, and then very, very importantly, looking at medium and long term, what we need then going forward to make, again, all of this whole market for renewable and decarbonized gases as attractive as possible. That's going to be really important. So let's make sure that we still, medium, long term, definitely have as much of a market-based approach as possible.
Thank you, Kavita. I mean, that's great. A great wrap up. And Sara, thanks very much as well for all your insights and offering today. As you have pointed out as well, Kavita, we've lost Jakub, had to go to business, and Alejandro is probably somehow beginning the trilogue negotiations. We're very, very happy. Absolutely. Very, very grateful and happy to have had experts such as yourselves sharing insights. I do like the point you made about Kavita about storage being the unsung hero. I think it's now becoming the sung hero, and we'll have to dedicate some songs to it at another time. And of course, though, in reality, I think that we are seeing in this situation that, in general, everybody who's spoken today is in favour of the speed with which the European Commission have acted. I think it's also clear that there are some areas that need to be fine-tuned, also from the questions that we've had. And I think it's also very clear as well that we expect this regulation to be living with us as a piece of past legislation before the summer. So things are moving very fast. And I would say that to you, dear audience, and there's still 122 of you that stuck with us all the way through to this end. This is a very dynamic and fast-moving piece of legislation. It's been great to have the views of the authors, one of the policymakers who are involved in negotiation of it, as well as industry, as well as those providing data on a daily basis to help advise people on how to go forward in this very difficult situation. But I do think that we can leave with that point, Kavita, and say storage is now becoming the sung hero of gas and the gas security of supply system. We do have to consider always about the future, and we need to make sure that things are indeed being devised, which are also compatible with our net zero future. So I'm very happy that we also heard that a lot from all of the panelists. The hydrogen ready, the provisions for biomethane, there was a question on it, we didn't get to it, but in principle, the need to enact the future of our sector, also whilst dealing with the travails and challenges of the present. I must thank the panelists again. I must, of course, thank you, the audience, for staying with us, still over 100 people. Really sorry about my timekeeping, but I found it a very interesting discussion. I wanted to let Alejandro run for well more than the 15 minutes supposed to have. In fact, did a full half an hour, of which we're very, very grateful to have had him with us today. And so thank you, dear participants, and thanks to the team once again. As ever, questions that are not answered, we will go through, we'll put the most relevant answers up on LinkedIn, so do watch this space. This has been recorded, so it is available. Please feel free to dive in and see the sections that you want to hear again. My sincere thanks to everybody. I'm looking forward to seeing how this security supply regulation plays out. But I think we can honestly say things are moving in a correct direction, given the challenge that we face. Have a great rest of the afternoon. Thanks very much again. Speak to you all soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.